and welcome to another episode of the Unlocking Fitness podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Pitts, and I'm excited to have with me today Kevin Baker, founder of PT Mentorships. I've been in the fitness industry over 30 years, and it's really rare to find someone who genuinely wants to see people succeed, but Kevin is really one of those people. He's been in the industry since 2001, and knows firsthand how it feels to be one of the statistics that are churned out of the basic qualifications for personal training and thrown into the industry to fend for yourself. He's been a personal trainer himself, managed and recruited personal trainers in the big chain gyms. He's tutored aspiring personal trainers and also worked in corporate health and well-being. His unique approach to personal training education really helps newbies to establish their own strengths and weaknesses, get into the mindset of a typical personal training client, and understand how to develop the skills they need to run a successful personal training business in the real world. He set up personal training mentorships in 2017 with the goal of educating future PTs to be competent and confident working in the fitness industry. He does this by giving continued support and guidance to the learner throughout their qualification and beyond. He genuinely is one of the good guys and quite rightly prides his company on their reputation. It's a real pleasure to have him as a guest today as we dig into the subject of personal training education. I really hope you enjoy listening in to our conversation. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Unlocking Fitness podcast. Today I've got Kevin Baker with me. I'm really excited to have him. So welcome, Kevin.
Good morning. How are we doing?
I'm all good. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be talking about PT mentorship and what that is, please.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much for having me on this. Firstly, in terms of PT mentorships, I set up the company probably about close to 4 years ago now. Having been a bit disillusioned myself with the actual education providers out there that I was working for. So my background, I qualified as a PT back in 2005, worked in a commercial gym, set up my own personal training studio, then kind of got into more the tutoring side of things. Really started to enjoy, it seemed like again, just a progression really in terms of instead of helping members of the public with their fitness goals, you're now helping individuals towards some sort of education. So it was really my passion to help people with that. I really got a lot of enjoyment from it. Mm-hmm. And what started to happen, unfortunately, the company that I worked for got bought out by like an investment company. And then all of a sudden it was all about making money. So the learner wasn't at the center of everything. It became, how do we make more money? How do we save on costs?
Right.
And as a result of that, you become a bit disillusioned, because if your passion is to help the learner, then all of a sudden you can no longer do that because you have targets that will affect you. If you know this learner isn't good enough and you're going to fail them, all of a sudden it's going to be more of a headache for you. So that's where standards do tend to drop. So I thought, I'm not happy with this. So that's why I set up PT Mentorships. Cool. So essentially our goal is to have the learner at the center of everything we do. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, we are a business, and yes, we do have to run it in a certain way, but ultimately the aim is to help the learner with a great learning experience. So we do that via ensuring that our mentors are actually successful PTs. Yeah, they've lived and breathed it. They've made the mistakes. They've made the money. They've been successful, and they can pass on that information to new recruits. So hopefully, if the aim is to stop them from making as many mistakes as, let's say, what I did, then I'm happy. Yeah. So I think that's kind of why it was set up, and it's evolved a lot over the years. It really has. We started it with just literally solely being one-to-one, so everything was one-to-one, but it soon became apparent that learners learn a lot better from other individuals as well. So having sort of like the contact days as smaller groups, learners actually learn a lot more from working with each other as opposed to just what we're teaching them.
Yeah, sure.
So the contact days now are group contact days, but there are options for individuals to speak to the mentor on a weekly basis, one-to-one as well. And that with that, you can essentially, you can stick on timetable, stick on topic as to what they've gone through that week. Or it could be, okay, I'm fine with this week's work. I've done it all. I've handed it in. It's all passed off. What else do you want to know? So then it can kind of lead them more into where they essentially want to go with the qualification and their career afterwards.
Cool. So do you think that what you have now, what you've created with PT Mentorships, do you feel like that is the kind of thing that you wish you'd had when you were starting out as a PT?
Oh, 100%. I remember my personal training qualification was it was through the American College of Sports Medicine.
Right.
Because after my degree, they were the ones that being referenced, and they were doing their first course in the UK. So I jumped on that, and it was very much theory based, and there wasn't really much application. I remember doing a submaximal fitness test on the bike, and had these little weight plates that you need to put on every so now and again, and asking RPE. And I was like, how is this relevant to what I'm going to be doing in a gym with a bike that hasn't got these weight plates and blah, 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 blah. And also I had to do another assessment where I was in a tiny room, and there was a lady sat on a Reebok step, and there were some dumbbells in there, some like tubing bandings. And I think that was pretty much it from what I can remember. It was quite a while ago now. And the first thing she asked me was, can you demonstrate a bicep exercise? And I looked at her in kind of disbelief going, okay, so I'm going to be good at showing people how to do bicep curls, but surely there's more to it than this. So I left feeling very underwhelmed, to the point where I actually carried on as a gym instructor for, I think, another 18 months being PT qualified, and thinking and kind of learning the mistakes again on the job. So I was working in the commercial gym as a fitness instructor. And it wasn't until I did more advanced CPD that I suddenly thought to myself, right, I'm ready to go now. So all of that experience that I've built up over time, and obviously the advancements with the qualifications as well, I've got to admit, now help the learner in a lot better way to hit the ground running. But ultimately, again, it's down to how you teach that.
Yeah, and I think, I started a couple of years before you. So I graduated from uni in 2000 in a sports science degree. And at that point, there wasn't really any such thing as a personal training qualification. Reps has only just started as a way of governing the industry. I mean, I did my circuit training qualification, but my degree, they allowed my degree to pass me as a personal trainer. I don't even dream of doing that now, because obviously doing a degree in theory is not the same as actually being on the ground and personal training. But yeah, it's changed an awful lot, hasn't it?
100%. I think I was the same. I remember I went to the Village Hotel in Headingley. I just finished university, and I thought, wow, I need to get a job now. And so I went in there, and I actually applied for the leisure cleaner job, because I thought, you needed to have a fitness qualification. I just needed some money, and now I'd finished uni. And the girl looked at my CV and she goes, you got a sports science degree? I was like, yeah. And she goes, well, why don't you apply for the fitness role? And I was like, oh, can I do that? So I actually applied for that and got the role there. Yeah. But I'll admit, I was literally giving members of the public the program that I was currently doing. That was it. There was no regard for them. It was what I felt confident in doing myself. And it's a very common thing that I find learners do at the start of the course. It's like the day one of our course, we get them into the gym, and it's a case of going through cardiovascular training, so making sure their form is good, they can introduce it correctly, they can monitor exercise intensity. So cardiovascular machines, resistance machines, and we start with barbells, because I don't have time to do the dumbbells as well. And you see straight away, and it's great for me as a mentor, because I can see the people who are not very good at this or not very good at that, and then straight away at the end of day one, learners need to do a development plan. So it's a case of saying, what is your strengths, what is your weaknesses? And because I have to mark that, if I've seen them, there's a discrepancy in what I've seen compared to what they think their strengths and weaknesses are. Again, I find that's my responsibility to say to them, well, what about this? What about that? Brilliant. And then putting a development plan together throughout the rest of the course, so they actually work on those weaknesses as opposed to just hide away from them.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a bit like trying to pass your driving test, isn't it? You know, any qualification, whatever qualification you do, is the kind of the basics to get you going. And you know, then when you're out there doing it, you start learning how to do it properly. You know, I remember my first personal training client was a motocross rider, a young guy, a couple of years older than me. I'm like, I don't know, 22, something like that. And he would just, every time he came into my session, I'd had it all written out on a clipboard, what we were going to do, planned it, everything, you know, periodization across all that stuff. And he'd come in and go, yeah, I had a bit of a crash at the weekend and I've really hurt my shoulder. I can't do that. So a lot of actually personal training is pivoting and thinking on your feet and you know, all altering stuff, isn't it? You know, and
Yeah,
it's difficult to teach that.
100%. I mean, it's far more difficult to teach that. And again, let's go with the analogy of learning to drive. Would you do all your driving lessons virtually? I mean,
Exactly.
I'm sure when I did my driving test and you had that awful hazard perception test, and you think to yourself, did that really help me with the hazards that I see on the road going at 20, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour? If there's just a still image of a puddle in the road. So it's essentially, it's the same thing with PT qualifications. You can learn about X, Y, and Z, but if you're doing it online, there is so much you're missing.
Yeah.
And there's no, again, transfer over to the application in the real world.
Yeah.
So I make sure that people if they can physically do it, we have to obviously amend things for learning difficulties or for actual physical impairments.
Mm-hmm.
But 9 times out of 10, like I did a course just yesterday, and we were doing all about cardiovascular training and taking the principles of what you'd learn on a sports science degree course with the gas analyzers and the blood lactate tests, because again, there's information in the manual, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you apply that as a PT? We can't suddenly start taking blood samples and X, Y, and Z. But what we can do is monitor the client in different ways to make sure they are reaching a certain level. So it's not only explaining that to the learner, but getting them to feel what it's like at certain intensities.
Yeah.
So then they can pass on to onto their clients. This is pretty brutal. This isn't very nice. Or do you know what? This is quite easy. This is your recovery day. So do this and do that. You should feel this way. So the intensities might be different, i.e. the speeds that someone's walking at or running at or whatever. However, how the person should feel will fundamentally be the same. You know, can we talk? Can we not talk? Are we wanting to stop? So it's these little skills that you'll learn from doing it, as opposed to just being online thinking, oh, I think I understand that, but then having a client in the real world suddenly not having an effective program, or they work far too hard and either injure themselves or kind of lack the confidence to come back.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you've been around, I've been around the fitness industry for a long time now. You know, how do you think the education system has changed over that 20 years, say?
Well, quite recently, there was a debate, and it's been again hugely beneficial for learners. It's actually been hugely detrimental to a lot of training providers, because it means that you've got to do it properly. So for myself, it's brilliant, because I'm like, well, I was doing this already, but they've put additional modules in. So for example, for both level 2 and level 3 now, you get assessed on your communication skills. Whereas before it was do a consultation with someone either within the group. So you ask them about their goals, their exercise history, blah, 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 blah. But you never get assessed on it. It's assessed via paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now I need to listen to people going through this consultation. So trying to build rapport with someone, using open-ended questions, using follow-up questions,
Mm-hmm.
using reflective statements to make the client realize that you've listened to them and you've understood them. And these are the key things that a lot of time when learners go through it, certainly at level 2, they're not really that familiar with it. And the guidelines are slightly, obviously, less at level 2 compared to level 3.
Mm-hmm.
But because they have a bit of a grounding in it, level 2, when I start mentioning about it again at level 3, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that now, I'll go through this. And it's really nice to see again the progression of how their communication skills have improved. So I think that's a massive improvement, because you can get a lot of sports scientists that are very difficult to talk to. And therefore they don't form those relationships with clients, and therefore they don't necessarily have a successful PT career. So they have to go down a different route to use that knowledge they've gained. Whereas you can have the real talkaholic that doesn't really understand about program design and nutrition concepts and whatever, but because they can talk to people and they're the people in the gym that they know everyone and they have that smile on their face all the time and people can relate to, they're the ones that are generally busiest. So I think that's a key thing. There's always been periodization in there, but again, how it's in the manual, it's still a bit, we're dealing with athletes here, whereas 99% of the PTs out there will be dealing with members of the public. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to put those concepts into a way that is user friendly for members of the public. So we still talk about periodization and progressive overload, but it's based on, it's giving them examples of, let's say, okay, what about school holidays, as opposed to competing in a certain event, you know, the Olympics or something like that. Well, I'm not sure in the first couple of years of your PT career you're going to be dealing with Olympic athletes, but you might be dealing with mothers, fathers. You might be dealing with people that want to go on holiday, Christmas coming up. So how are you going to periodize your training around that, as opposed to, you know, national sporting events? So there's that, and it's kind of how you teach it essentially, and just making it so. That's why the mentorship is good, because the people that are teaching it are the people that have done it. So if you're relying, let's say, on the manual can teach it in a certain way. There's great information, don't get me wrong, in the manual, but then it's how you apply it to your PT business. So there's some people who want to be doing online PT. Some people will be wanting to do commercial gyms, private gyms. They'll want to just be doing it for their own learning and education. The other great part of that as well is now that people have to do a business plan. So they have to now put that plan together prior to actually going into the industry. And I think that, again, is fantastic. People a lot of the time may not have a clue about financials. They might not have a clue about marketing. So they're just going into a new career with some extra knowledge, but totally blind as to what they need to do. So that their client journey, how are they going to get people into their business, setting up all the paperwork ready to do the consultations and the consent sheets and X, Y, and Z. So you want to hit the ground running, as opposed to, again, just going through the motions. Let's just do a consultation on my mum in my living room at 11 o'clock at night because I've got my assessment the next day. There's no learning from that. It's just ticking a box. So I think they're the key things. Communication skills have had to be improved massively. And a lot of people, again, they might be very good in terms of their technique in the gym. They might have aced their anatomy and physiology and their nutrition exams, but they just can't talk to someone. So they fail on that concept. And we're not asking someone to suddenly be, you know, a life coach, but we're asking them to listen to their client and gather that information and kind of start to join the dots. And
I think that's quite difficult, isn't it? Personal trainers or people who are doing anything new for the first time, they want to demonstrate what they know, they want to demonstrate how amazing it is, and, you know, all that enthusiasm sometimes spills over into a lack of listening. You know,
100%. What's the analogy? It's take the cotton wool out of your ears and put it in your mouth. It's just,
no, I heard that before.
No, it's just making sure that the client is kind of going into the motivational interviewing realm, if you like. It's kind of saying, look, your client is the expert in their own well-being, their own journey, and their own lifestyle. We are just there to listen to them and then give them advice and options to help them along that journey. So again, if we're analyzing someone's nutrition diary, so again, for the new versions of the qualifications, learners have to do a 7-day food diary. And personally, I make them use MyFitnessPal, which again is quite authoritarian, I know. From that, it kind of makes them realize that MyFitnessPal can be a pain in the backside. There are flaws to it, but there's also a lot of benefits. So I get a lot of text messages that week going, I can't believe how many calories are in this, or how much fat is in that. And because it's more awareness of what they're eating. And then when it comes to the actual contact day, when they come in and then we go through the food diary analysis, they sit down with each other and they analyze kind of what they've done. They go through sort of like a gold standard of what they should be doing, based on formulas and percentages of macros and this, that, whatever. But then they see the disparity between where they should be and where they currently are. So then it's having that conversation with the individual to say, okay, how can we kind of bridge this gap a little bit more to get you closer to where you need to be? That might not be just one bridge. This might be multiple occasions we need to revisit this, but what can you do to get you a little bit closer there? I have some ideas, but what do you think you could do? So again, it's through the course, they're getting exposed to, say, using MyFitnessPal, which is great because they might turn around and say, I love it, or they might turn around and say, I hate it. So then it's a case of saying, what else could you use then? Yeah, because some clients will hate it. But again, it's going back to that whole behavior change model as well. Yeah, as to why do people hate it? Well, because they might not necessarily see it as important. And again, that's part of the consultation and the nutrition analysis that we go through, that sometimes as a PT, you will think, okay, calorie deficit, got to be in calorie deficit to lose weight, blah, 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 blah. But then the client doesn't have an interest whatsoever in discussing their nutrition. They've come to you to exercise. So how do you kind of work with that client to make them realize what they need to do? And it can be difficult. It really can. Instead of just saying, right, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it, because that will just fall on deaf ears, and that's when clients ignore you, or at worst they leave you because they can't follow your advice.
Yeah, or they're fed up of you banging on about something that they're not interested in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting hearing you talk about how really the scope of practice has changed over the years. I mean, I remember when I first started out in the industry, there was nothing about a business, nothing about marketing. And, you know, that's why a lot of personal trainers I've found over the years have started getting the qualification thinking, yeah, this is a great way of making some extra money, and then stopping doing it because they can't make a business out of it.
I think that goes down to the whole industry, really, from going from an employed to a self-employed model predominantly. So, you know, I have to say to learners, you are now a business. You are not an individual. So look at what any business does. It needs to have a business plan. It needs to have a marketing strategy. You need to have an accountant. You need to have all these different kind of tools, fortunately, stroke unfortunately now, that you need to be good at in order to have a successful business. Long gone are the days where kind of you suddenly put on your PT t-shirt and people flock to you and say, oh, can you train me? I don't think that's ever happened, to be honest, apart from in the movies and maybe from
me. No, it's kind of happened to me a little bit. I was one of the first female trainers in the Leeds area, on the National Register of Personal Trainers when it first started. And I was like refusing people left, right and centre almost every week because I couldn't take people on fast enough, you know. And then all of a sudden, after like 6 months, it all, you know, it was a trickle, and then it was nothing.
Yeah, because again, more and more people get qualified, and again, there's a classic line of saying, okay, every man and his dog's a personal trainer now. And it's like, well, it's vocational training. So you could say the same about any sort of profession. There's so many plumbers, electricians, but who do you go to? You go to the one that's recommended. You'll put something out on social media saying, right, my tap's leaking, I need a plumber. And then people won't recommend someone who's rubbish. Yeah, they're going to recommend someone that, you know, did a good job for them. And it's the same thing with personal training. It's if you're a sole trader, if you're a private limited company, you should be going off your reputation. Don't know why that word eluded me there, but yeah, you do off your reputation is is a lot of your marketing done for you. And you know, certainly with PT mentorships, we get a lot of referrals as a consequence of their friends speaking to someone who's gone through our course. And I love that, you know, because it shows that we've done a good job and we've helped people in the industry. And certainly looking on Instagram and talking to graduates and things and how well they're doing, that is the reason why we set up the business, and that's why we continue to run the business. So that's great from our perspective. But yeah, ultimately now you will have to compete in a more saturated market, but that's not to say that you can't be successful.
No, that's true. Yeah. So can you tell me what if somebody was a sports coach, let's say, and they decided that they wanted to take their career full time and they wanted to go down the fitness industry education route, what kind of options are available for people at the moment? Because the switch from a sports coach is hugely different to somebody who knows they want to go into the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm. We did a course, it was actually in between lockdowns, with a football team who they had a lot of like sports scientists, sports coaches and things, and because it was lockdown, they were all self-employed, so they needed to they wanted to kind of reskill and upskill. Mm-hmm. So we kind of took them on, and what was great was their coaching skills, obviously. So them being in the gym and analyzing performance and communication skills was great, and that's what you would hopefully expect from a sports coach. What was obviously lacking was more the technicality and plan around personal training, etc., etc. So they may not have necessarily done every exercise in the gym. They might not have known how to monitor intensity. Their anatomy and physiology may be good, but can you relate that to what you're doing? So there was a lot of transferable skills. So again, let's say going back to what we talked about with the communication skills, they would wing that. Yeah, they would do great on that. But again, they would learn from, let's say, their partner, because their partner's not a sports coach, and they'll be like, oh, wow, I do this quite easily, whereas this person's not so good. This isn't their strength. Yeah. And that's, again, the great part of the face-to-face workshops, is that people will learn from each other, good or bad. So certainly with that, you would have to still go through the practical side of things, because that's that would be different. It'd be different modules, if you like, compared to what you've done before. So going about it, what I'd always say to people is do the full qualification. Sometimes you can pass them from prior learning. So let's say if someone's done a sports science degree, or someone's done, let's say they've done a sports massage course, they've already done their level 2 and their level 3 anatomy. So they might say, oh, I want to box that off straight away. Again, from my perspective, I'm like, why do you want to do that? Earn your stripes. Yeah, learn it, because once you learn it once, you learn it twice, you learn it 3 times, you're learning it better, and you can probably apply it better as well. So once you go through that, and then you can see kind of the journey in terms of how it all links together, that would be a lot more beneficial for you, and you feel a lot more confident once you've qualified. So yeah, they'd still need to do the full qualification, because how we run it is a diploma. So it's basically the level 2 and the level 3 stuck together. There's no level 2 individual and then level 3 individual. You get your level 2 and level 3 at the end. So it's going through all of those modules in order to successfully get your PT qualification. But in terms of the different ways of doing it, again, like I've already talked about, you could do it online. How a lot of online people get the kind of the benefits of online are, you can study around your own time, you've got the flexibility, you can come in as and when you want. Well, the reality of that is you never get it done. No. You just, priorities take over, and then all of a sudden you take on this new role, or you suddenly have these deadlines you need to hit, and out the window goes all your education. Whereas if you have that structure and that timetable that's suited to you, we generally say our courses are structured so people have to do between about 10 to 15 hours a week of study.
Right.
So if they can do that, and we put together at the start of the course like a study plan, say, when are you going to fit this in? Now, I'm not going to come around your house banging on the door saying you should be studying now. I want you to be conscientious enough to know that this is going to work for you, and be open-eyed enough to know this is what I need to do. I can't just wing this. It's got to be an investment in my time. Then that way they stick to the timetable and they get through it, and there's a certain deadline to complete things. Online, you don't get that. And like I've mentioned before, online, you don't really get the interaction with people. They might say, again, you have email support from a tutor, but again, a tutor is different to a mentor. A tutor can be someone who's just passed their tutoring qualification, and let's say they may not have ever personal trained before. So I don't know about you, but if I go and do a course somewhere, I want to make sure the person that's teaching me has actually done this and they've been successful before.
Oh, yeah. I had an experience with a level 4 specialist qualification, and bless her, the girl that was teaching it was just almost teaching verbatim what the online bit said. So it was like, do all this online study before you come to the practical day. There's 2 practical days, and then I think it was like 4 weeks later there was your assessment day, and she was just regurgitating what was online. And I'm like, I've read this, and people were asking questions. She couldn't answer it, but I could. So I was like, what do I do? Do I help them and like make her look silly? I'm like, well, I can't help answering questions, because it's important that people have those questions answered.
Yeah, 100%. And again, that's where I find a lot of time, like, again, how it used to be, you used to do your level 2 qualification first, have some time in the industry before you did your level 3. So that was your apprenticeship, if you like, to learn from your mistakes, to ask those questions before you actually start taking money off members of the public. You kind of taking it off a gym in terms of a salary. But now everything's just whirlwind. It's fast forward, and you get some providers now that, within X amount of time, you can get your level 4 in this, that, whatever, or your GP referral. And I'm like, oh my God, if you're now working with someone with medical conditions and you don't know the basics, that's dangerous. And you talked earlier about scope of practice. And I think so many PTs, if you have the interest of the client at heart and someone comes in with a medical condition or something outside your scope of practice, immediately you'd refer them to someone else. You refer them to someone with more experience and more knowledge in that area. However, the ways of the world is, well, they've come to me and we start justifying it. They want to work with me. I need their money. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I can train them. And then that becomes the norm. And it's like, yes, well, they might have wanted to come to you, but if you've got their best interests at heart, have a network of people that you trust that you can refer out to. And then once that person has had their injury sorted, or they've got some medical advice on X, Y, and Z, and they've been cleared to exercise, think of the confidence you'd have in training that person, the reduction in anxiety every time they walk into the gym and you train them. But also, you've now got a referral network where you can cross-refer people. And this is, again, a lot of the time, it's short-sightedness, where you just need to take that money now because, yes, you've got to pay that bill. But there are so many other people out there that are apparently healthy adults that you can do an amazing job with. That probably haven't come to you yet because they're the ones that are kind of thinking, I can kind of do it myself, when in fact they can't. So that's where your marketing comes in.
Yeah, and I think that's important in terms of defining the role that the PT has and what they want their own scope of practice to be. Because so many, like you said, so many trainers are just, I'll take every new client I can. It doesn't really matter what business you're in. When you first start out in business for yourself, you just take on everyone because you're frightened that you won't get anybody else. So you end up working in the periphery of where you actually want to be working, and when you have somebody who can say to you, actually, you don't need to worry about working with them because you really have confidence or your expertise really lies here, and just having that mentorship to bounce that off gives you an immense amount of confidence as an individual to just go, do you know what? I'm not the best person for you. And I think that's really important when it comes to the best interest of the client, and nobody seems to be teaching that.
Definitely. And I think it boils down to, again, having that plan, because in the business plan, we can talk about demographics and people that, you do want to work with. But a lot of the time when people start in the industry, they don't have that plan to start with, and they just drop into any old gym and they're like, there's no one here to train. It's like, well, that's ultimately your fault, because any business would research where they're going to start advertising or where they're going to start working from. So a lot of the time we can put a business plan together and say, right, I want to work with this gender, this age group, etc., etc. But research your gym, because if you're a bodybuilder, you're probably more likely to find bodybuilders in a bodybuilding style gym. Don't go and work in a commercial gym where there's novices.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to work with novices to build up their confidence in X, Y, and Z, choose the gym that's right for you. That's really a fundamental part of your business plan. Where are you going to base your business? That can then lead down to, okay, right, well, we've got more females, more males in this area. What's the age group like, etc., etc. What are their interests? And then that way you can start to work more with the people that you want to. So it's kind of picking your gym first. But in the same respect, it'd be great. It's kind of a double-edged sword as well, because I do see a lot of the time, especially at the moment, where you've got people online saying, I've just opened up 5 spaces for 5 men who are golfers who have a mole on their left arm that I want to start training. And you're like, wow, there can't be many of them. And it's too niche. Yeah. Whereas you think to yourself, okay, well, yeah, you might want to train a certain demographic, but to begin with, you probably do want to start taking on other people. And that's again where the industry's gone. When I was a gym instructor, I did have to work with a whole host of people to induct them into the gym.
Yeah.
We don't get that so much now if we go straight in at level 3 PT, but you might start getting clients with, with different goals. So the focus can be on a certain demographic, but that kind of comes with time, and it comes with you actually thinking to yourself, is that the demographic I actually want to work with? I'll give you an example with PT Mentorships. When I was working with larger training providers, probably 90% of our graduates were males. Yeah, if you had a female on the course, then that was a novelty sometimes.
Really?
But with PT Mentorships, it's kind of the other way around. Now, I don't want to start going into the debate of are females more conscientious than males, etc., etc., because I'll get lynched. But yeah, but it seems to be that when I have the conversations with people and I say, look, this is how we structured the course because it's going to be more beneficial for you. You're going to have that extra support. You're going to feel more confident and competent once qualified. That's where we actually have a larger percentage of female graduates compared to males. Yeah. So I didn't know that at the start. Yeah, that wasn't my kind of my advertising method or my whole way of doing things. But my way of doing things was what's best for the learner. And then those learners have started to move into PT Mentorships business as a result of that. So it's a similar sort of thing if you're a personal trainer. If you portray yourself to be a certain way and your imaging, your branding is a certain way, you will probably attract those people. So yeah, you've certainly got to think about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because your branding is a certain way, a certain person is going to walk straight up to you in the gym saying, I've seen your branding, I love what you do, come train with me. So yeah, you will get someone who's very much away from that.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I could absolutely talk to you for hours, but is there anywhere that people can get in touch with you and your company, find you on socials, all that kind of stuff, if they want to know more about what you do?
Yeah, certainly. We've got a website, if anyone uses websites anymore. So it's simply www.ptmentorships.co.uk. We're on Instagram as well. We're on Facebook. So yeah, just visit us there and drop us a line and we'll get in contact and just have a chat really about your options. Cool. We do 3 levels of mentorship, just depending on how much support and guidance that you want. So we can chat through those options. We're planning on running courses more around the UK. We're more sort of like Leeds based at the minute. But my job at the moment is just trying to find gym managers that are willing to kind of run courses from there. So if anyone's watching this who's a gym manager who wants to run a piece, give me a call. Yeah, so with that, there's a certain commitment to learning, and we always explain that to learners on sign up, because we don't want halfway through to say, look, I can't do this. There are times obviously where things happen in life that we need to then drop them back to the next course. But ideally, people know what they're getting into from the start. They know it's going to be a great learning experience, but they have to put the yards in order to pass things. So yeah, just visit our socials and get in contact with us that way is probably the best bet.
And I'll put the link to those socials in the show notes so that people can just click and follow.
Great. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, thanks for your time, Kevin. It's been really interesting.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
The Unlocking Fitness podcast is a Most Motion original, hosted by me, Sarah Pitts. It's based on the Unlocking Fitness book series, which you can get from unlockingfitness.com. At the time of recording, book 1 in the series is available, with books 2 to 5 in the pipeline. You can find more Most Motion at mostmotion.com and on Facebook at Most Motion.